When Thierry Henry says that you're one of the most clever players he's ever seen, you know that you're onto something special. For somebody who has played with some of the world's all-time greats, this specific player struck him the most. One of the Premier League's best midfielders, or even players really. He's a generational talent that despite some failed experiences, knew how to lift his head up and continue pushing forward. If you read the title or saw the thumbnail, you probably already know who we are talking about. Today, we'll be taking a deep dive into the magical and fantastic world of Kevin De Bruyne, arguably one of the most accomplished players ever at seeing spaces where there are none. However, what strikes us about the Belgian is not his talent, which, don't get me wrong, is a fantastic quality to have, but he's not the first and probably will not be the last to be gifted with this vision. What strikes me is his technical ability and how he uses both feet. He has been given the nickname of the Ginger Pele. His spatial awareness is next level, and he's not afraid to either assist or score with his left or right. Thanks to his quick control and pinpoint passing, he can invent something out of nothing, with the capability of splitting the defense wide open at one touch of the ball, but never afraid to take the shot when necessary, capable of doing so from distance or in front of the goal. His calmness and grace with which he plays the sphere in heavy situations should be studied. He can find gaps and spaces that simply don't exist and forcefully bring them into existence. Other than this, he's also a hard-working player that does not shy away from putting in the time to improve his craft. He's basically a modern and upgraded version of Steven Gerrard. Somebody that has it all: running power, vision, the goals, the assists, and the ability to freeze the playing field in his mind, finding the point that has the highest probability of scoring. Instead of forcing a pass onto a run, he does the opposite, forcing the run with the pass, being multiple steps ahead of his teammates and opponents. But his story is a complicated one. He's had to face several unpleasant things as a teenager, which have only led him to grow stronger and become the player he is today. So how did this man from Belgium grow up and blossom into this marvelous midfielder? Well, let's find out. Kevin De Bruyne was born on the 28th of June 1991 in Drongen, located in the region of Ghent. His first steps with the football were at a very young age, and by the time he turned 6, he was already playing for a club in his hometown. 2 years into his footballing journey, he would join Ghent, staying in the youth divisions of the club until 2005. By this time, he had already done enough to be noticed by some of the scouts in Belgium, and ultimately it was Genk who moved quick enough to get him into the club. However, there was a problem. For KDB to join, he would have to move away, and at the time, he was still pretty young, being only 14 years old. However, he believed in his dreams, so alongside his family, they decided to take the chance. In his first year at the club, he would be put in a boarding school, and everything seemed to be going fine. When the season ended and he returned home, he would get ready to repeat the cycle for the following campaign. However, this time with a twist, as the club agreed to pay a foster family to take care of him. As he would go on to say in an interview with the Players Tribune, which if you have the time you should check it out, it's a very interesting video. KDB was a very shy kid and he would struggle to make friends, as several times he was described to be difficult due to his shyness. He never really did do anything to cause issues or problems, and he's a very honest person, not afraid to say what is on his mind. So at the end of the following season, he said goodbye to his foster parents and returned home, expecting to go back again next year. However, when he arrived home, he discovered some shocking news, and what would probably go on to push him as a footballer. He was informed by his mother that the foster parents did not want him back for the next year, due to him being too difficult, and the club wasn't willing to pay another family. In that moment, his career hung on a thread. However, his strength of character showed when he asked his parents to allow him to return, and in 2 months' time, he would have been in the Genk first team. During this period, he would stay at a boarding school, but not the one he was in, one for troubled kids. His parents gave him the green light to do so, and he would be returning with a fire lit inside him that kept him moving. At this point, he was entering his final year of school and already being called up to the second team of the club. In a month's time, he was being regularly featured for the first team. Once he was getting more time with the main roster, his foster parents returned, citing this all as a big misunderstanding. However, De Bruyne would reject them, showing a side of him who was not afraid to maintain his stance when asked to. He would debut for Genk among the pros on the 9th of May 2009, having established himself in the first team for the following season. His first goal would arrive later on, the 7th of February 2010, making sure his club got all 3 points in a 1-0 win to Standard Liège. He would play 40 games for the team, scoring 3 goals and assisting 4, so everything was setting up nicely for him. The following campaign he would score 6 goals and serve 17 assists in 35 games, cementing himself as a fundamental player for his side, helping his team to their 3rd title in club history. De Bruyne was in a class of his own, almost a world of his own, one that we common mortals can't see. However, he would describe in that same interview with the Players' Tribune that the years of his breakthrough at Genk were some of the loneliest in his life. He also got called up the first few times by the Belgian senior national team, with him debuting against Finland in August. Especially impressive were his 16 assists in the league, doing so as a teenager. He would just continue to deliver in the next season, improving his goals tally as he got his first taste of Champions League football, scoring 8 goals and assisting 15 more. However, a pattern was starting to show as again he was forced to miss out on games due to injury, in what would ultimately prove to be his final season in Belgium, as earlier that year in January, England came knocking, in the form of London-based club Chelsea. It was announced that an agreement had been reached on a sum that was around the region of £7 million for the transfer of the young Belgian, but he would see out the remainder of the season with Genk before joining the Blues, signing a 5-year contract tying him to Stamford Bridge till 2017. When he arrived, he made 2 appearances for the English club, both of them friendly matches, before being loaned off to Werder Bremen in the German Bundesliga. Despite playing for a club that was struggling to remain at the top flight, he still managed to score 10 and assist 10 more, saving the club from relegation by 4 points. At this stage of his career, he had achieved the status of being a very interesting player. A failed experience in London, but still plenty of time to correct that, as this wonderful season in Germany would attract the eye of Jose Mourinho, the then manager at Chelsea, who decided to give him a chance. He played 9 games for them and on his debut got an assist and the Man of the Match award. But mediocre performances did not convince the staff enough, and when the January transfer window rolled around, he would be packing his bags returning to Germany, with Wolfsburg signing him for €22 million. Not much to note as he only played 18 games, scored 3 goals and assisted 7 more. But this would be enough to see him off to Brazil with the national team for the World Cup in 2014. With 1 goal and 2 assists, Belgium would have a decent tournament, seeing themselves out in the quarterfinals to eventual finalists Argentina. Chelsea would regret selling him for such a low fee, as the following season in 2014-15 he would score 16 goals and provide 28 assists, setting a record in Germany for most assists in a season with 21, helping Wolfsburg to a 2nd place finish in the Bundesliga, and winning the Player of the Year, with vital goals in the Europa League against Inter and in the DFB Pokal against Dortmund, scoring in the final which they would win. This was the first time that KDB proved that he had what it took to stay in the big leagues. Werder Bremen was not just a fluke, he was the real deal, and in England, they were all too keen to bring him back again. He started the first few games for Wolfsburg, winning the Super Cup against Bayern, before a certain team in blue came knocking. But this time, it wasn't London, but Manchester, as City put in a £58 million offer for him, making him the 2nd most expensive transfer in English history behind Angel Di Maria. So for the 2nd time, he would return to the Premier League to see if he could prove himself and achieve the status of best midfielder in the world. His debut would come in an away game against Crystal Palace, and in his first start for the club, he would score a goal against West Ham, doing so again for the next 2 games. A knee injury meant that he was sidelined for a month, missing out on crucial games in the FA Cup and the EFL Cup, with Manchester City managing to win the latter. De Bruyne assisted and scored in 4 out of the 5 games he played in the competition, needing only 24 minutes against Everton to turn the tie around. In his first season at the club, he would feature on the 23-man shortlist of the Ballon d'Or, scoring 16 goals and assisting 13 more, proving that he was not the Chelsea reject everyone thought he was. His displays of class would just continue as he would assist 20 goals for the next 2 consecutive campaigns. His 2017-18 season was a particularly memorable one for the club as he helped City to become Centurions, assisting the winner on the final day of the season. He was voted Manchester City's Player of the Year and won the first ever Playmaker of the season, for the individual with the most assists, also being selected for the PFA Player of the Year. However, like all the great geniuses, there was a price to pay for his brilliance. In the 2018-19 campaign, would have to sit out almost entirely the first half of the season, and again in the final part of the year, with injuries to his leg, so he only managed to rack up 6 goals and 11 assists. He came on in the final 30 minutes against Watford, scoring and assisting, helping City to the first domestic treble ever, but it would prove to not be the best of seasons for him, also having to sit out several matches for Belgium. He was not involved at all in their Nations League, but he did put in some good performances in the Euro qualifications with some big games against Scotland and Cyprus. It was clear that under Guardiola he was becoming a special player, being asked to play several different positions. The scary thing is that he can do so, with multiple games in which he was either a 6, an 8 or a 10. His 2019-20 season is regarded to be one of his best individual campaigns, as he scored 16 times and assisted 22 more, with 20 in the Premier League, equaling Henry's record and becoming the first to reach this milestone for 2 different leagues. Having achieved this in Germany as well, he was both the PFA Premier League Player of the Season and Playmaker of the Season, also being featured in the Team of the Year. He would hit at least 25 goal contributions for the next season as well, becoming a focal point for City's midfield, winning the PFA Player of the Season again, and he would become only the 4th player to win the Premier League Player of the Season multiple times. In the 2021-2022 campaign, he achieved the personal best of 15 goals, and would wear the captain's armband for a few times for both club and country. The following season, however, he would show everyone why he was probably the best player in the world, during the 365 days which City won the treble, cementing their status as an unbeatable team. KDB assisted 29 goals and scored an additional 10 himself, providing 7 for his teammates in the Champions League, with 2 in the semi-final against Real Madrid. He was mostly played as either a centre mid or an attacking midfielder, and for the first time, he finally had a pure striker in front of him, one that thinks only about scoring. Erling Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne created an unmatchable partnership, scoring goals for fun. He would be nominated for the UEFA Men's Player of the Year, but would lose out to his Norwegian teammate. An incredible season for the Belgian, but again, there was a price to pay. Having played so many games and being used so often by Pep, at the beginning of the 2023-24 season, during the first match, his hamstring would give way, forcing him to abandon the field after 23 minutes. He was also very unfortunate having to have to leave the field earlier that year in the Champions League final for a similar issue, the second time it has happened to him. When the doctors examined his hamstring, they noticed that it was incredibly compromised, so he'd be missing another 4 months of action, keeping him out till January. On his return, he got an assist against Huddersfield and in 21 minutes decided a very important game against Newcastle. His first start since the injury would, funnily enough, come in the return fixture against Burnley, where he got an assist, making everything go full circle. He will close the year out with 6 goals and 18 assists in 26 games, helping Belgium to a round of 16 finish in the Euro 2024 as well, as the team's captain. Kevin De Bruyne has time and time again got us used to his ability to move the ball around. We have become accustomed to his greatness. He has reached 100 goals for Manchester City and is the fastest player to get to 100 assists, being one of only 3 players to win the Player of the Year for consecutive seasons. The fans have loved him since he signed, being labelled a Chelsea reject and not worth the sum spent on him. He went on to become one of the greatest players at the club. Despite having to sit out multiple games per season, his mental strength has allowed him to continue dazzling on the field, earning himself a spot as one of the greatest midfielders of all time.